What's good, y'all? And welcome back to another preseason preview video. In today's video, we're going over the Toronto Raptors. In case this is your first preseason preview video of mine, you're seeing basically what I do is go over the offseason, give a little recap there, and then try to look into the future and see what we can predict in this upcoming season. I'm making videos on all 30 NBA teams, so make sure you check out the channel for the ones I already uploaded, and then make sure you hit that subscribe button for the ones that are coming forward. But let's just jump right into it and start talking about the Toronto Raptors. Last year was a pretty okay season, I guess. They ended up being the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference, going 30-52. And I know what you're thinking, that's not that okay. They missed the postseason completely. Once you put in the context that last year was the first full year of their rebuild, because they traded away Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby mid-season 2 years ago. So now last year was their first full season with this new core, this new retool or rebuild, whatever you really want to call it. And then also last year, they lacked consistency pretty much throughout the whole season. I mean, Emmanuel Quickley, who they brought in to be their new starting point guard, he only played 33 games. Then you have other super important pieces like RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, Jakob Poeltl. All of them missed 20 plus games last year. Despite them not being too successful in the win column last year, though, it does seem like this team is pointing more towards the retool direction instead of the rebuild. It doesn't look like they're going to fully tear stuff down, because it already seems like they're building up what they have. And with that, we might as well just get right into the offseason for the Toronto Raptors. Before I talk about the guys they brought in, I do want to highlight the losses that they had. And it really isn't a lot here in Toronto. They did lose Chris Boucher, though. He's been here for a long time now, almost 10 years if I remember correctly. I just looked it up, and he played 7 seasons in Toronto, so not quite that decade mark, but you get my point. He's been in Toronto for a while now. He is moving to a different Atlantic Division team, though. He signed a new deal with the Boston Celtics this offseason. And obviously, since he's been a part of the team for so long, been in the city for a while, I'm sure fans have grown some type of attachment towards him. But if we're talking just strictly what he produces on the basketball court, I like him a lot with being that really versatile big, can run some power forward, center, stretch the floor a little bit, be active defensively with his athleticism. He brings a lot of good stuff to the court. What I really think it boils down to, though, is, like I mentioned, they're kind of gearing towards a little bit of a retool, and Chris Boucher definitely does not fit the timeline with a lot of the other core pieces that are here in Toronto. So it kind of it makes sense to let him go off, do his own thing with his career, and then kind of focus on this youth movement going on in Toronto. But like I said, Chris Boucher was pretty much the only real loss that the Raptors had this offseason, so we can quickly shift over to the additions that they had. And the guy I want to talk about first is their only real free agent signing, and that is, of course, Sandro Mamukelishvili. I'm not going to sit here and act like I said that on the first try. It took me a little bit. Don't mind the scuffed cut. There's a reason he only goes by Mamu. But Mamu did sign a 2-year, $5.5 million deal. The second year is a player option, so he'll be making a little under $3 million a year. And to be honest, Mamu was one of my more underrated free agents going into this offseason, just because the last few years he's kind of been buried on the San Antonio bench and never really got like a solidified role in a rotation. Him coming to Toronto, though, I do think that he has his role pretty much carved out for him. I definitely think that he will be a part of this rotation this year. I just feel like he fits the mold of this new age, versatile big that can do a little bit of everything, especially offensively. He is super talented. He's coming off a great year shooting the 3 ball, but then also I feel like there's a lot more to his game. I think he's sneakily athletic. He also is a pretty underrated passer as a big, I think, too. I'm just really excited that he has a chance to actually show all of the talent he has. Defensively, he's pretty active too. I mentioned his sneaky athleticism. He's able to move pretty well for his size, being 6'11", and he's also a pretty solid build too, which again doesn't really limit how he moves on the court. He moves really fluidly, and he's one of those guys too that can play a little power forward, play a little bit of center. I do think that he'll be geared a little bit more towards center on this roster, just for what the Raptors need. And again, for less than $3 million a year, I am very confident that Sandro will outperform this contract. The other big move the Raptors made this offseason came in the draft, where they drafted Colin Murray-Boyles with the 9th overall pick. I know some people thought that this was a reach, and I've said very publicly before on this channel, I'm no draft expert or anything, so it's not like I go into the drafts with big boards or whatever. I wait see what happens. Then I kind of do my deep dive in there. But CMB comes into this draft as a defensive prospect. That's definitely where he hangs his hat. He has pretty good size, being 6'7", but also has super long arms. I think it's like a 6'11" or maybe even 7-foot wingspan. And then also he's super strong, and it's those physical attributes that allow him to be a very versatile defender to guard like 2 through 4, maybe even some 5s, depending on like how much they play through the post. And that's kind of been the theme in Toronto, so it makes sense that he was their draft pick. For the last few years now, they've been going after wings that are versatile, have long arms, and can defend. That's basically what they look for. If you check those boxes, you'll probably end up on the Raptors. I did mention a lot of people thought this was a reach, though. The main criticism I've seen for Collin Murray-Boyles is his offensive game. The fact that he isn't a reliable three-point shooter. He isn't really reliable too much to be like a guy with the ball in his hands. So it kind of just questions you on like, how is he going to fit into an NBA offense? And obviously, a lot of these guys are super young. I believe Collin Murray-Boyles was the youngest second-year player in this draft. Obviously, the one-and-done guys are super young. But CMB is not like this super old prospect, so I do think that he can grow his offensive game a little bit more. But the defense is definitely what's going to get him on the court to start. And although this isn't technically an off-season move because it happened last year at the trade deadline, I do want to talk about Brandon Ingram real quick because he has yet to play a single game for the Toronto Raptors, but he's already locked up. He's extended. They traded for him, and he is here in Toronto. Just a quick recap for those of you who missed it. At the trade deadline last year, the Raptors traded away Kelly Olynyk, Bruce Brown, a 2026 first-round pick from the Indiana Pacers, and a 2031 second-round pick to the New Orleans Pelicans in exchange for Brandon Ingram. And since B.I. hasn't played a game for the Raptors yet, my thoughts are pretty much the same. I like that the Raptors took a swing on a guy as talented as Brandon Ingram because we know Toronto isn't a free agent destination, so they're not going to sign someone of B.I.'s caliber. They need to either trade for him or draft him. So the fact that they're bringing in someone of his talent through the door, that's a good thing. I like when you bring in talent to a team. But then also the value that they gave up for him, I think was pretty good. Only one first-round pick that wasn't even their own. I meant 2 veteran role players that don't fit the timeline. So I do like the value. I like that they're bringing in talent. I do overall think that it was a good move trading for B.I. And now that we recap the offseason, let's take a look at a potential rotation we could be seeing from the Raptors. In their starting lineup, we have Emmanuel Quickley, Brandon Ingram, R.J. Barrett, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl. And then off the bench, we have Jamal Shead, Ochai Agbaji, Grady Dick, Collin Murray-Boyles, and Sandro Mamukelashvili. I tried, guys. Mamu's on the bench. So this Raptors team is one of the weirdest teams in the Eastern Conference, if you ask me. I don't know what to expect from them. I mentioned before, Brandon Ingram obviously is such a key part of this team. Hasn't played for them yet, so that's kind of hard to gauge. A lot of these players have been in and out of the lineup, like Emmanuel Quickley, like I mentioned at the top of the show. 33 games last year, barely has played with a lot of his Raptors teammates. And I don't really know how to fully figure out where this team's going to end up in the standings, because I do think they are a talented team. Like Scotty Barnes, talented player. Brandon Ingram, yes. R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, they have a lot of talent on this roster. I don't know how much I love the fit of that, though. The number one thing that jumps off the page for me here is the three-point shooting. I definitely think that that's going to be a pretty glaring issue here in Toronto. Obviously, they do have some three-point shooters like Emmanuel Quickley, Ochai Agbaji. Grady Dick is, he shoots a lot of threes. He usually hovers around those mid-30s-ish, though. He's not like an elite-level three-point shooter, I wouldn't say. And then they do have some guys that are just non-spacers like Scotty Barnes, obviously Jakob Poeltl. Collin Murray-Boyles is going to struggle with this three-point shot. Jamal Shead, R.J. Barrett, none of these guys are knockdown three-point shooters, so I do think it could be pretty easy for defenses to just kind of pack the paint here, especially also when you look at where their creators are really looking to create. Brandon Ingram loves that mid-range. R.J. Barrett will get to his mid-range. These guys like to operate in a smaller area of the court, which I do think could make spacing a little bit iffy. And I guess while I'm talking about their big three of Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and R.J. Barrett, the one thing that kind of scares me about R.J. Barrett is he's reverting to this third role now again. He came to Toronto and he was kind of the number 2 behind Scotty Barnes. It was like them two back and forth a little bit. We've seen RJ as the third option in our offense with the New York Knicks before he got traded. And he's a weird player because I feel like he is better or best with the ball in his hands. When he is the second option with Scotty Barnes, he has the ball in his hands a little bit more. When he was in Toronto, we saw him having just more aggression with the ball. He was a better playmaker, just all around a much better player than what he looked like in the Knicks. I feel like he's one of those players that as you fall down that totem pole of offense, your value kind of shrinks with that. He isn't the best off-ball player, so when he's playing majority off the ball, he's not impacting the game as much as if he was with the ball in his hands. And I guess that could be why we heard some reports that the Raptors were looking to move RJ Barrett off after they traded for Brandon Ingram. Maybe they see that and were like, thinking similar things. Regardless, though, he is on the team right now. He is a starter on this team right now, and he is going to have to take the third seat behind Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. Like, I do think, hypothetically, a guy like Ochai Agbaji or Grady Dick fits better in the starting lineup if you take RJ Barrett out and slot one of those guys in there. And I do think that maybe they'll run some lineups where it's like the starters and one of those guys as that fifth starter instead of RJ. And maybe we'll see in the numbers, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's a better fitting group. I do think, though, that RJ Barrett is talented in this league and is a starter level player. I just don't know for this team if it's the best for him. Defensively, I do think that they'll be pretty solid, probably around average to maybe slightly above average. I do like the fact that they have like a rim protector of Jakob Poeltl. I think he's pretty underrated as a defender. Then you have other guys like Scotty Barnes or Colin Murray-Boyles. I'm having tough times on these names in this video. Sandro's throwing me a loop. Every time I try to say Colin Murray-Boyles too fast, I jump on my words. But he is a good defender. Immanuel Quickley, I think, is a super smart team defender. Him himself in isolation may not be like a lockdown guy, but as a team defender, I think he's good. And then they have just a lot of length and athleticism around the rest of those guys too. So I do think that defensively they should be solid. I'm just kind of a little worried about the fit and the flow of the offense. And before we move on, I do want to talk about some notable reserves. Starting off with Jacoby Walter. I definitely wanted him to make this rotation. I was going back and forth between him and Jamal Shead on who I wanted to be like their last guy, their 10th man. I do think that Jamal Shead fits better for what the team needs as a point guard and as a playmaker. I really like what he brings, so that's why I ended up going with him. But Jacoby Walter was just the 19th overall pick last year. He's still only 21 years old. He definitely deserves some type of shot. I don't think he should just be written off and be like just thrown away already. He is talented enough to make the rotation. He just couldn't find a spot in mine. And then I was going back and forth with a few wings. Jonathan Mogbo kind of crossed my mind because I do think that this team is not small because a lot of the guys are from like 6'5" to 6'7", but Jonathan Mogbo is 6'9" and can give them a little bit more size at that power forward position, especially if a guy like CMB isn't completely ready when the season first jumps off. Like, if he's looking a little slow, maybe they insert him, they get some size, get a little bit more veteran presence, even though he's pretty young too. And then the other wing I was contemplating was Jamison Battle. I really like what he brings from the three-point shot. He was one of their more consistent three-point shooters last year. I mentioned before that they kind of struggle with three-point shooting, and if that is a big issue, I definitely expect Jamison Battle to get a little bit of burn. And now it's time for my ceiling, floor, and expectations for the Toronto Raptors. Starting off with their ceiling, I could see them being as high as the 7th seed and in the play-in tournament. I do think that there is a pretty clear top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference. Everyone else, you could kind of say what you want, sift through them below that. But that top 6, I'm pretty confident in. I do think at their ceiling, though, the Raptors can be at the top of that next tier right below them in that play-in tournament. Like I mentioned, they do have talented players on this team. They have 2 former All-Stars, a former 6th Man of the Year candidate. He went second, Immanuel Quickley I'm talking about. RJ Barrett was a top 3 pick in this league not too long ago. They have talent on this team. And I do think that if it kind of smooths over and they figure out how to play off of each other well, I do think that they can make the postseason. And at their ceiling, I have them as that 7th seed. They only have to win one of the play-in games in order to make it. I do think that they would win at least one of those 2 games. Once they make it to the playoffs, though, I don't want to get your hopes up too much. I do think that they would be a first round exit. At their floor, I can see them being as low as the 13th seed, and in the lottery, like I said, there's that clear top 6, and then right below that, you can kind of say, like, I like this team a little bit more. I like this team a little bit more. At their floor, though, obviously, this is them falling all the way down to the bottom of that pile. I do think it's much more likely that they're closer to that 7th seed than this 13th seed, but I do think that it is a possibility. And then when you talk about my expectations for them, I expect them to be around that 10th seed, still in the play-in tournament, but more in that bottom half of the bracket. Since they are in that bottom half, though, they would have to win 2 games in order to make it, and I just don't know how likely that would be. So I do expect them to be playing losers. I do think the Raptors are going to win some games just strictly based off of the talent that they have on their roster. When you look just roster for roster, they definitely have more talent than a bunch of teams in this Eastern Conference. Again, though, it's just something in my gut is telling me the fit is going to be pretty clunky. Hopefully I'm wrong, because I did enjoy watching Darko Rajakovic's system with the Raptors, where they're just swinging the ball around, everything's moving fluid. The shots didn't always go in, but the ball was moving and it looked good. The process was there. Hopefully I'm wrong and we still see a lot of that with just more successful baskets made. But yeah, I don't know. Something in my gut is just telling me that it's going to be clunky. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below where you think the Raptors are going to end in this year's standings, and how far will they make it in the postseason? Will they make it at all? Let me know. Like I said, they were one of the weirdest teams in my mind, so I'm really interested for what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social media, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.